and welcome to Unlock Your Blocks. My name is Elyssa Smith, and I'm your host, and I'm so excited today to introduce Jill Lerman. She is an incredible person, and ever since Jill and I met, I have to tell you, we've not known each other for that long. I mean, it's what, Jill, maybe like 8 months, 6 months, something like that?
Just about.
It's not been very long, but we just clicked, and we have this connection when it comes to just how we operate in the world. And Jill has this incredible kindness and gentleness that comes through, as you'll get to see during this episode today. And I'm really excited to welcome you, Jill. So I'll just tell them a little bit about you. So Jill Lerman is a play and parenting coach, early child educator, play expert. You guys, did you know that was a thing? And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience with her as a play expert. It's amazing. And she's also a mama to a preschooler. She empowers overwhelmed parents and caretakers. I don't feel like there are probably any of those anywhere. Right? Overwhelmed parents and caretakers to connect and engage with their little ones through simple invitations to play and create to help make parenting feel more joyful and manageable. She also serves as a play expert and consultant for brands, where she teaches classes, runs workshops, consults on product development, and provides play ideas. Jill knows how difficult getting through the day can be, which is why, above all else, her approach makes it easy for parents to facilitate interaction and play that supports development. She loves helping families create an environment and culture that sees children as capable from their earliest days, that values creativity, playfulness, bonding, and connection. So we're going to put some links in the show notes, guys, because you'll want to follow her after this conversation. And Jill, I just want to let them know, when you came and spoke in my membership, Jill did this incredible presentation about play styles. And I hope we'll get into some of this today, but it blew my mind when you had us kind of walk through and assess what play style we were. And then I figured out what mine is. It has absolutely, I literally go back to that session so often, because my life now is more joyful than it was before that session, because I identified why certain types of things make me light up inside. And so I've incorporated more of that into my calendar, so that I have these time blocks of things that are just sheerly for my joy. So I owe you such a debt of gratitude, and I cannot wait for people to hear from you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. And that means so much to me. I feel like that is one of my main goals in the work I do, is just to help people feel more joy. And I think that can be true certainly in our parenting, and that's a big part of the work I do. But I also think that that's just true in finding it with ourselves. And everyone needs play. Children need play. Adults need play. What it looks like changes as we go through different ages and stages. Foundationally, it's a developmental need for all of us, grown-ups too. And I think that your life can change when you open up that space to give yourself time for the things that light you up.
Absolutely. I love that so much, because I think, so what we talk about on this podcast, as you know, is women who are overworking ourselves. We're maybe second guessing ourselves a lot. We have negative self-talk going on. We tend to be really, really serious. That's the thing. And I don't know if you've ever heard HALT, like you shouldn't make a decision when you're feeling hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Yes.
So there's a group that I belong to where we added the word or S at the end for too serious. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or too serious, you need to take a minute and get out of survival mode for a hot second, and then kind of find your joy again, so that you don't have to be adulting from that really serious place. So I think when we're looking at the role that play plays in life in general, because you primarily work with families, right? And brands to kind of talk about play with children and inviting engagement. But I just felt like it was so valuable what you taught us in the membership about play as an adult too. So really, it's such a huge part of our healing process to either play with our children or invite that playful connection, or to, and both, I guess, to do that as an adult, to seek out the things that really bring us joy as an adult. So do you mind sharing, how did you get into this as early childhood educator, play expert? I mean, how does one become a play expert? And was that like you set out, I am going to become a play expert, or was there something else that kind of got you here?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I worked in early childhood education for a long time, taught in private preschool in Manhattan for many years, and also in the parenting centers of those schools. And I think it's important that I share that because I was always, from the start of my teaching career, working with children separately from their parents and also working with caretakers with their kids. So it's kind of like two different muscles. And in that time, just really fell in love with play and just watched that things come alive at the hands of children of all ages from infancy, and really grew to understand that play is the best tool that we have to support children across every area of their development. And I'm not just talking about like skills like language and communication or gross and fine motor skills, right? These buzz terms, but also life skills like problem solving and out of the box thinking and building frustration tolerance, building independent. Play was just the best way for children to make sense of the world around them and their first and most fluent language. So through my work there, I started my own business where when I wasn't teaching, I would go around Manhattan where I lived at the time and would teach in people's homes. I did a lot of things in stores and play spaces, but helping people learn how they could facilitate and just see more play and more engagement at home. And things were going great. I was helping people understand how they could make the most of the toys they had without having to feel like they had to constantly buy new things, or how to use household materials in creative ways, and sort of using my teaching experience and my background there to help people learn how to do more of it outside of school. And then the pandemic happened. Like it did. And for me, like so many others, that's when a pivot began. March of 2020, the week New York shut down, my school shut down, my business as I knew it shut down. I also found out I was pregnant, and it was just kind of like a what now? And so my first impulse was parents were spending more time at home than ever before. They were their child's parent, their caretaker, their teacher, and so much more, and were feeling more overwhelmed and burnt out than ever. And I was like, hey, these things I was doing, this can help people. We're spending more time at home than we ever have before. We're trying to think of things to do so that we can keep our kids engaged, but also find time for ourselves while we're all stuck here at home in this bubble. So I started sharing ideas on social media and teaching classes virtually. And some of the stores that I used to do events in reached out to me like, hey, we want to create community for our customers on a national and international level. Will you teach a workshop? Will you do Q&A? Will you? And just this whole other world opened up to me that never would have had this not happened. And what I started to realize was like, hey, pandemic or not, people need support in this. Play is not always intuitive. We think that it's just supposed to happen and then feel like we're failing or our child's failing when it isn't. But like many skills, it needs facilitation, it needs support. And I understood how parents could do that, and I wanted to help. And that was sort of what got me on this other path where it grew into my coaching business, my membership where I share simple ideas that use the things you have around you, and kind of moving into this new phase of being an expert because brands started to see the value in what I was putting out there and my level of experience in education and how that could support them in their goals of product development or content creation. And then becoming a mom gave like a whole new lens because one, things that sounded simple to me before parenthood were not simple enough. I was like, oh, no, honey, like you were mistaken. So that was really eye-opening, and I could bring that perspective in addition to my expertise. So I sort of had this unique lens, I think, for brands or people that own play spaces and were looking for support in developing curriculum, because I could offer it from the expertise of my early childhood background, but also as a parent, what it was like to do these things or experience these things. And that's how I've sort of forged my way into the work I do now.
Oh, I love this so much. I just love that your whole mission is just to make life easier for people. It's to make it more joyful and easier.
Yes.
We need so many more people in the world doing that. I just think it's so lovely. I just like thinking about, because this is not something where, I don't know, I feel like I'm trying to put my finger on how I want to say this. I think so many of us are focused on survival. Mm-hmm. And so many of us are focused on high performance as parents, as humans. Yep. And that's what makes it so serious. And to have someone whose whole mission is to make that burden lighter and more joyful is, wow, I just feel like I could relax into that space spaciousness, you know? It's just such a beautiful offer to make to people, to invite them into, let me make this easier for you. And as a mom, I can definitely speak to that fact that, I mean, especially because in my particular case, I went through all kinds of trauma with my son's birth. I was going through an abusive relationship at the time. So I had trauma on trauma, medical complications, like all these different things going on around the time that my son was small. And I'm like, I'm supposed to play with him?
Yeah.
Just trying to like
No,
keep a roof over our
right.
heads.
I'm like trying to survive. Yeah.
Right. And even if I wasn't going through all that, literally I have a close relative who's going through brand new parenthood right now. It is just mind-bogglingly difficult to make that transition. And then you're just trying to keep this little person alive that you've never had to keep alive before. And then all of a sudden you're like, what about their development? And what about their brain growth? And what about their, you know, am I doing everything right? And it just can get very serious very quickly. So to come alongside parents and offer what you offer is just such a beautiful thing. So I wanted to ask you, maybe as you've been building this out, or maybe something that you see in your clients, where does things like self-sabotage play a role for you, or maybe it's stuff that you see in your clients? Because, you know, we all deal with procrastination and like negative self-talk, and otherwise we wouldn't really need somebody to come and be a joy specialist, right? Like you are. It's like we all have that need. So where have you seen this play out, maybe for yourself or maybe for some of your clients?
You know, I think that something I see a lot in the families I work with, and that I also can relate to personally, you know, we can't help our children to build skills that we don't have. And I think that
I'm sorry, wait, hold on. I need to stop you right there. Let's just let that ring out into the silence for a second. You say that again. You cannot pass on skills to your children that you don't have.
That's right.
Mic drop right there. And that is
and
why.
The episode's over.
And that is it. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you and good night. That is why I do what I do. And I think what we do is so nicely paired with each other, because the inner child reparenting part of us, like that journey of healing for every adult, especially mamas, right? But like all adults who had any sort of dysfunction in their childhood, big T trauma, little T trauma, tiny T trauma, we all missed stuff.
That's right.
We missed the joy we were supposed to have. We missed the skills for dealing with big emotions. We missed, you know, I love what you said. Did you say frustration tolerance? That is, I've never heard those two words together, and I know exactly what you mean by that. We missed big chunks of what developmentally was required for us to feel like normal, sane humans our whole lives. So we develop anxiety, we develop depression, we develop a really overly harsh sense of self-doubt. I mean, all those things. And so if we don't got it, how are we passing it on?
That's right.
So we have to learn as we're going. And I love that that's what you just pointed out. Okay. So we can't pass on skills that we don't have. All right. I'm going to let you get back.
That's
right. I probably totally derailed you.
No,
Sorry.
you didn't. And I feel like our work is so aligned in that way, because I do believe, you know, you have a child and all of your crap just starts like, if it wasn't apparent to you before, like, whoo, there it is. Like it's a mirror, right? And we see things about ourselves. If, you know, you're someone who's done a lot of work on yourself for a period of time, even before you've become a parent, it still brings stuff up and out, right? That is the journey of this. So I think that, you know, those things are so tied together. And when I work with parents, whether it's like in parenting coaching around behavioral challenges or other things, or strictly about supporting play, the same things always come up to start, which is about like us looking at ourselves, right? It always starts there. And, you know, kind of understanding our triggers, understanding why we respond to certain things in certain ways, and helping to give ourselves the tools so that we can then pass on the tools, right? Things like, you know, you hear expressions like, your calm is contagious. Cool. Like if I don't know how to, yeah, right, exactly. Like, oh, boop, okay, right, exactly. So it's just like, that doesn't help when I don't have any tools to regulate my own emotions, right? To identify my own emotions. And, you know, I think with each generation of parenting, we're learning so much more. We're understanding so much more about brain science and the effects of our actions on who these little people become, the effects of the way we speak to our children and what that means for them. And I think we're currently in a generation of parenting overall that's incredibly conscious, and that, you know, really we recognize a lot of things in ourselves, like, hey, you know, I don't know that I want to pass that on if I can avoid it. So what does that mean, right? What has to happen? So I feel like a huge piece of what parents I work with struggle with, and certainly something I'll admit it here that I struggle with myself, is, you know, managing some of that stuff, like recognizing your own triggers, you know, practicing your own emotional regulation. Look, we talk about frustration tolerance, like it's one of my favorite terms. I have very low frustration tolerance. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'm very, I know you know.
Me too.
I tend to be really hard on myself. And I do have an expectation of myself generally that I am supposed to get it from the get. And I don't have a lot of patience for learning. So when we talk about like being a person, you know, developing your own business and these different things that happen, there are going to be learning curves. And one of my biggest struggles is like treating myself with kindness and compassion when I'm learning, and, you know, recognizing like, hey, this is new. And frankly, I think that's something that even with my clients I share. My daughter and I this morning, I really try to focus on, you know, not rushing to the best that I can in the morning, because I recognize what that has done in terms of my own anxiety from the time I was young. And I really want to try to minimize that for her. But we were having one of those mornings where, despite best efforts, the rush was happening, and she'll call me out, right? Because now we're in a practice that she'll say she knows, and she'll say, I don't like what this feels like. I don't like that you're rushing me. And, you know, she's 4. And I had this moment of kind of like, okay, like I'm doing it, and, you know, we're here. And I looked at her, I was like, you know what? You're right. You're right. What can we do? And she's like, we need to take some deep breaths. I'm like, you're right. Let's take some deep breaths. So I think it's not about perfection. It's about, you know, labeling and identifying when you don't show up perfectly. And helping your child to see that, like, hey, that happens. Sometimes we don't show up to the way we want to. What can we do? I think it's about being okay apologizing to our kids. I don't know about you. That was not an experience I had as a child. Adults were kind of like the all-knowing beings that never got it wrong. And there wasn't a lot of like, hey, I could have handled that better. I really try to model that for my daughter. But I recognize the progress this morning in that, like, at another time, me not showing up the way I wanted to and the way I know I can would have set me on a spiral of being hard on myself, of feeling like, you know, there's no coming back from it, agonizing all over it. And this morning it was just kind of like, you know what, you're right. And how do we move forward and change the course of the rest of the morning? And we did. And, you know, I think that like that's really what it's about, is finding, not about the perfection, but finding the ways to work through things. So I think, like, I know I'm kind of talking in circles a bit, but I think that like that's a struggle that I deal with personally. And that definitely has affected my business, because you just can't show up perfectly all the time, and you just can't always get it right the first time. And I think just like trying to embrace that more and have more patience with that has been a really key piece of it. But I also see with my clients how it's true for them too in their way, and kind of just like, you know, finding ways to kind of like still move forward and pivot after the fact, especially for so many of us that I think are recovering people pleasers and recovering perfectionists.
That makes so much sense, because the second that you made the mistake, then the shame spiral can kind of come in, especially if your kid is the one calling you out. By the way, she sounds super chill. I feel like she might need to be the nice guest on the show. Like, let's respect her.
She would love it. She would love it. It's funny, like, I'm sure you find this, you know, also as a parent, like, it's amazing. And I've always felt like this about kids. It's part of why I love what I do. Like, they're such a gift. Like, we are just so freaking lucky to be able, whether you're a parent or not, just to be in the presence of children who remind us, I feel like, of all the things that we then spend the rest of our adult lives trying to get back, like living in the moment and being present, like honesty, openness. Just feel like I learn from my daughter every single day. And that's just like a perfect example of like, wow, yeah, thank you. And thank God that you feel comfortable enough to like call me out. Like every time I have doubts about myself in parenting and then something like that happens, I'm like, okay, like something is right. Because if you can do that and you feel confident enough to very respectfully be like, you know what, you're not holding up your end of this. That's the whole point of this, right? Like that's the whole point, I feel like, of everything I try to do. So even when I have like my moments of doubt, which I have many of, things like that happen, I'm like, you know what? She's going to be okay. Like if she could do that at 4, like it's going to be okay.
She's going to be okay. She can tell when it's not okay and she can call us out when it needs to change. I love that. It's really special. And I think too, there's something so big about being able to know when you've made a mistake, because I mean, this is like it's weird to remember this from my perspective now, because I really know myself now and I've gone through all this inner child reparenting and trauma healing, and this would never be my reality now. But there were several decades of my life where I couldn't be honest if I had made a mistake. And so while I'm committed to total honesty, that value of mine would go away when I needed to cover up that I had made a mistake. Yeah. So there was such shame attached to having made a mistake. And God forbid I made a mistake with a child, right? Like, thank God I had kind of started working through this by the time I had my son. So I was into understanding I need to apologize to him when I make a mistake, and let's figure out another way and all of that. But just this perspective of what a mistake can do to you as an overachieving perfectionist. It's a universal crippling effect.
It's so real. It's so real.
It's so real.
Yeah,
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with him, Chaz Lewis. He's Mr. Chaz on social media. You would love his work. He's an educator, but a huge part of his work is conscious discipline, and also like breaking generational cycles, like, recognizing that the way the grandparents or parents did things doesn't have to be the way you do it, and then how you actually break a cycle. Because I think, right, it's really nice to have the intention, but actually doing it looks different. He's become a mentor and a friend. And over the weekend, I actually went to a workshop that he led about conscious discipline for like a small group of educators. And he does this thing with like mistakes where he has like oops cards, and he calls it like, oops, our opportunity to practice skills, or our opportunity to problem solve. And I was just like, I love that so much. And rather than it being like, a mistake, which is sort of like how my brain immediately goes, I have to like rewire, and I've worked to rewire my brain to not feel that way in the same way, but it's still work. But this idea of like, hey, this is actually like an opportunity here, and we're going to celebrate it. So like throughout the day when oopses happened, which they do, you would get these cards, and it would be like, it was an oops card, and on the back it would be like, but you're still awesome. You're still beautiful. You're still smart. You're still whatever. And I was just like, yes, this, like, we need more of this in the world. This idea that like, hey, this is how you learn. This is how you grow. You can recover from this. Like, I don't know about you, but my instinct initially, when even on the smallest level, like I spill something, the first thing that my brain wants to do is be like, oh, idiot. Right? Like that's the wiring, and the rewiring comes in the like, like, okay, that happens. Things spill. We can clean it up. The whole ordeal maybe took like under 3 minutes. Was that really necessary to have like that really mean and negative self-talk? So I feel like just, I don't know, that our opportunity to practice skills or to problem solve was such like a game changer to me, because now over the last few days, that's been where my head goes. Like, okay, so there's an oops. So like, now what? And I think that that's like a helpful reframe.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Okay, so Mr. Chas, we'll follow him too.
Yes.
That's incredible. So I'm just thinking how universally applicable this is. That if we can learn to rewire the part of us that has the negative response to the oops, that's the battle, right? Because whenever we learned when we were little, maybe we have evidence, our survival brain probably has some evidence that making a mistake gets you less of what you need. And making an oops is actually life or death mistakes.
That's right.
And so that's why in that moment when we spill something, if it was preventable, this is like a thing for me. It used to be for me that if I did something wrong, but it was preventable, like if I knocked something over, if I hadn't been hurrying, or if I hadn't set it there on the counter at a precarious position, or oh my gosh, I'll tell them myself. I usually put stuff like this in my stories on Instagram because I want to be like, guess what? I had a chance to practice emotional regulation today.
Yes.
But I have this favorite. It's like a hot mug, but it doesn't have a handle. It's from Starbucks or somewhere, and it's this beautiful lavender ceramic. Yes, but it's made of ceramic material, but it's double insulated, double wall. It's just like the best cup. It fits right in my cup holder. I grab it with me. I take it every day when I'm taking my son places, and I've always put my green tea in it in the morning. So about 3 or 4 months ago, I was carrying it in from the car. Legit to this day, don't know what happened. It just went out of my hand and shattered on the floor. And I was so bummed. I was so sad about it. And so I texted my sister a picture of it, and I was like, I'm so bummed this just happened. And in like 5 minutes, she sent me a link to eBay. She's like, is this it? And I was like, wait, because I told her, I was like, I don't think Starbucks has these anymore. So she's like, I found it on eBay. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I ordered it. Do you want to know what happened 2 weeks ago?
What?
I dropped it on the garage floor again.
No.
And I have no idea how it slipped from my hand. And so I'm like, okay, I have to change something about how I'm doing this. But this time I didn't even feel bad about it. I was just like, that's such a bummer. I wish that hadn't happened. But I wasn't reliving every step of like, oh my gosh, it's so stupid that I was hurrying, or it's so dumb that like, I don't know, maybe my hand was wet or something and it just slipped. So reliving the steps that I could have done. Do you know how much energy it takes us to go back and relive and then berate ourselves for everything? I mean, I have clients all the time that will come to me, and that's their shame spiral that happens every time they do something. And God forbid that it actually, maybe they perceive that it harmed someone else, that they made the mistake. You know, I have clients who will come to me all the time and say, oh my gosh, I feel so bad that this person feels bad, and I did this thing and I think it made it worse. And I'm like, well, actually, you just made a decision that was good for you, and it's okay that the other person didn't like it. You know, when we get into these shame spirals about how, gosh, I made this mistake, or gosh, I said this thing, and now I'm not only did I break the glass, but I hurt someone's feelings, and now I'm probably good. But your survival brain thinks, I mean, in that moment that you're talking about with the spill, your survival brain thinks you're going to die because probably whatever mistake you just made is going to end up in rejection and abandonment. You'll be kicked out of the herd, and then you'll be sort of sucked by a predator and be someone's lunch. I mean, it just thinks.
I know. It's crazy like how these like primitive things that have been sort of ingrained into our thinking for generations that are meant to be helpful.
Yeah,
actually,
like we're glad that if we're being chased by a predator, that we have that fight or flight response.
Yeah,
but maybe not all the time.
But like, I think what's really interesting, and one of the things that has really informed my work in terms of helping parents and kids, is like, we have to understand those brain states of ourselves, right? But we also have to understand them of our children. And I think behaviorally, and this is probably like its own episode, but you'll find this fascinating because you are into this kind of stuff. Behaviorally, when we see our children exhibiting different things, we can actually learn to associate what part of the brain they're in when that's happening, to then be able to figure out, okay, which one of my tools is going to be most supportive in this moment. If we're in survival state, like a child's having like full-fledged, usually that is accompanied by like physical action of some kind, like a massive tantrum, whatever it is, some of these skills that we read in parenting course, whatever, are just not effective. They can't hear you. So it's about like, how do we move them out of the survival state of the brain to be in a state where they can actually hear the words I'm saying, and these tools will be helpful. I also think when we think, when it comes to like brain science stuff, the executive part of the brain, right, where, having like logic and reason and impulse control, all this stuff where that lives, is not fully developed until, they say 25, but like, we also say it could be later for some people. So when we think about
stunted by trauma,
that's right.
That's one thing. Trauma and addiction.
That's right.
Can stunt the executive function.
Exactly right. So then it's like, when I think about the population I tend to work with, and it's like, okay, well, we're having these expectations of like a 4-year-old or a 2-year-old in this part of the brain that, adults don't have full, functioning in that space. So I think just like understanding some of that stuff and like which, you know, tools are actually going to be helpful to your child and you in those moments is such an underutilized philosophy. And also like not only for parents, like teachers, like I think like often, you know, teachers, especially who are dealing with like a huge class of kids that are, you know, under their care, we tend to lean on these forms of discipline or positive reinforcement and encouragement that aren't actually effective because we just, you know, don't know what tools to use in which moment or don't have the tools or, you know, whatever it is. So I think that understanding is so huge, not only for you to understand it in yourself, but also to be able to support your kids.
That's so powerful. And you know what? Have you ever been able to sense that your inner child is having a tantrum? Because
oh my gosh, please. Always, always, like all the time,
it's
time.
A whole thing. It is
It
a whole
is.
deal. And so I think this makes total sense because like
So
your
real.
survival brain cannot be talked out of this. Okay.
No.
So it's like literally it doesn't recognize words. And you're saying all this and I'm like, the trauma response and the survival brain trigger response are right in line with what you're talking about
That's
with
right.
tantruming children.
That's
I'm
right.
like, oh my gosh, I think I'm
right.
I think that's what happens.
I mean, and like,
several times a day.
aren't we all like in a way? Yeah, I think it's really important. And I also think it allows us to, you know, treat ourselves with like a little more kindness and compassion, certainly to treat our children with that, if that's, you know, if that's you. But I think, you know, when you recognize that, you recognize, yes, there are things that we can do to elicit change in our brain and the way we're wired. We can. Like, I mean, you're a perfect example of it, not only in your personal life, but in the work, you know, and the ways you support others. But I also think it's really helpful for us to kind of recognize, hey, these are patterns that have been wired into us, some of them for generations before we were even here, right? So there's that work and how deeply rooted that is in our being, like these survival instincts that we're talking about. There's generational traumas that we carry, you know, on a personal level and also just like as human beings.
Societally.
You know,
really,
societally. Yeah. And then I think there's like the stuff that we carry, you know, just individually from our own upbringing, our own experiences, our own stuff. And it all kind of creates these patterns, and the longer they're with you, the more compassion I think you have to show yourself that it might take time for rewiring. Not to like spend this whole episode talking about Mr. Chaz, but like this is another thing that like Chaz. I know, like I just feel like he's so aligned with what we're talking about. But this is another place that he explains this really well, because I've heard him use this example where he talks about like a playlist and like putting new songs on the playlist. And it doesn't necessarily mean the old songs get deleted, but the more new songs you have, the less frequently the old ones will come up. And like, that was such like a moment for me, because it's like, okay, maybe it isn't fair for me to just, you know, assume that because I've done all this work, poof, it disappears.
Never have
right?
to deal with
like,
it again.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, that might not be realistic, but the more tools, the more strategies, the more that I give myself, then yeah, the less frequently it does come up. And I think it's true even like the work I do with families. It's amazing to me in parenting. It's the only job that you go into it, you have no training, you have no
There's
experience.
Not even a handbook,
like
okay?
nothing.
Like,
nothing.
How do I take this up?
Right. Right, exactly. But here you are in the CEO's office, and it's like, don't mess it up. Like the stakes couldn't be higher. It's just
also,
insane
you're not allowed
to me.
to hire help. Like that was
exactly.
In my mind too. Like,
yes.
Ask for help about
exactly.
This.
No support.
Like, you don't know how to do this.
Exactly. And like, don't fail. And I just think that like that's so messed up. And
someone's life is in your hands.
Exactly. Like it's crazy when we say it out loud. Like it's so crazy. But I think that like that's part of why I wanted to get into this, because I just felt like, look, don't get me wrong, even with all my tools and it's still hard. Like that doesn't go away. But do I think that in the day-to-day, my life is so much more joyful, connected, less overwhelming because I have tools? And I think that like, that's the thing. It's like, it's not about, it's of course, there's always going to be challenges. There are always going to be things, but when you do have tools and support, you have things to pull from to make it easier. And you know, that's really the goal, not about it not being, you know, ever feeling stressful or challenging, but more to actually have things to reach for. And so often we don't. And it's just like, well, good luck. Good luck out there. Yep. You know, crazy.
And maybe you'll get your graduation certificate at some point. But
Hope
like,
so.
We're watching.
Yeah. It's just like, it's nuts, man. So I think that like, that's really the goal is tools, tools for you and your own personal development and regulation, tools to help you better support your kids. But the reality is that there are so many amazing people out there with different areas of expertise, with different gifts that are there to support you. And it's just about like, knowing it's okay and seeking help. And honestly, even in my business, like different coaches I've worked with, support that I've reached out to along the way has been so instrumental in having success and sort of like accepting like, hey, I don't know, and I'm not getting it right on the first try. And there's also somebody who can help me, right? And kind of succumbing to that, I feel like is such an important piece too.
That's so beautiful. I love that so much. This has been okay, so first of all, this interview has flown by. We're at the end,
God,
and I feel like I could talk to you for 6 more hours.
I know.
So
we need part 2.
Oh my gosh, I love it. You guys be sure that you're following Jill on her socials, and we'll have all that in the show notes as well, just to get more of this juiciness. This is such a good, and even if you're not a parent, I feel like Jill has so much gold if you are doing the inner child reparenting journey as well. So this has just been amazing. So I have 3 questions that I like to close out with, and the first one is, for someone listening right now, maybe she is just kind of coming into this realization that she has a very low friction tolerance or a very low tolerance for oopses in her day. What would you recommend for the next right step for her?
Well, first of all, I feel her.
Yes, I know. Both of our hands are over our hearts right now. Like, I got you, girl.
I just like, girl. Yeah, I think, gosh, it's so hard. I think maybe the first step, again, like, I don't know, those cards, I just felt like were such a powerful thing because it was like an actual physical embodiment of this thing. So I feel like that is, I don't know, that's like my first thought is just this idea of like, how do we shift perspective on this? And I feel like that could be a helpful tool. Just kind of having them. Yes, exactly. Something to make that like, it's really effective with kids too, visuals, right? It's like, because things that are abstract are really hard for our brain to kind of take in. So I feel like having a physical representation is really helpful for me personally. Around my apartment, if I like took you on a tour right now, you would see Post-it notes all around. I like leave them on the mirror of certain mantras or things like that. So I feel like for that, that might be a really powerful tool is just leaving yourself those oops cards, leaving yourself those little Post-it note and reminders of like, hey, oops is actually opportunity to practice skills, opportunity to problem solve. I feel like it starts there with that physical piece. And the more, like any habit stacking, the more we do it and integrate it into our lives, the more then it starts to become a go-to response. And I feel like that's a really good place to begin.
I love that. I love that. I mean, that's what I use too. I have physical reminders. I have reminders that pop up in my phone for just different things. And I have one that pops up every day that says my best is good enough. Every morning that pops up on my phone. And it really gives you such a that's like such a nice cushion, right? Because if I made a mistake or I had an oops, but that was my best in the moment, it's good enough, right? And it's good enough for this day. I exhale every time it pops up on my phone, and it comes up every day. So I love having visual reminders everywhere. So I love that advice. Okay, the next song I like to ask my guest, or the next song, and that's what the question is about. Your favorite go-to pump-up song. Pump-up songs can just really shake us out of survival mode and kind of help embody that more free, more joyful version of us, especially if you pair it with a dance party. So I love asking this question to all my guests.
That's such a good one. I feel like right now, it's funny because like this changes, I think, like for me for different moments.
Too. Yeah.
Right now for me, do you know the song Head and Heart by Joel Corey? When we get off this call, listen to it. Like everyone just like go. It's just such like a good dance song. And I feel like every time I hear like those beginning chords, it starts like bum bum ba dum bum 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 bum. The second I hear it, I'm like God, like my body just wants to move.
Yay! Okay,
so that one's like been a big one for me right now. I feel like that's a big pump up song. Before I just did a corporate speaking gig. I like had that on before I started. It was like I feel like it gets you in the zone.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I'm actually playing with the idea of creating a Spotify list of every song that all the guests
you should do that.
Isn't that a fun idea? So I think
love
I'm going to start putting this together. So I love that. Also, I keep hearing songs from my guests that I've never heard. I've never heard of this one, so I'm gonna go listen to it, and I'm gonna get like it's basically selfish, guys. This is why I asked the question. I'm a dancer. I love music. And then the final question that I'd love to wrap with is, what is your go-to self-care when you don't have much time? Because I feel like self-care can be this like big, like, oh, I need to do all the check off the 10 things, but sometimes we got 3 minutes and we gotta lock ourselves in the bathroom for that amount of time so that no one's bothering us. What is your go-to when you just have a little time?
Yeah, I know, especially like the population I work in, like parents, it's like, you know, and then again, you like we need one more reason to feel like we're failing at something. It's like, it's so easy to then be like, oh, like, you know, I'm supposed to have self-care. I can't even do that. Yeah, I actually started this when my daughter was an infant, and I was struggling because I couldn't like do self-care in the way I had been used to before having a child. It was also the pandemic, so like we weren't leaving, and you know, it was challenging. I like couldn't just go to a workout class or like do, you know, go get a manicure, do these things I like used to do. So I made a list of 5-minute self-care ideas is how it started, and then it evolved into like 10-minute ones, and like basically I'm very type A, if you couldn't tell from this interview. And it helps me to like organize my brain in that way so that when I have the window, I don't spend the window thinking about what I'm going to do. I just like look at the list and pull something. Yeah.
Every single one of my clients, we always have this discussion. It's like there's decision fatigue happening because you're waiting until the moment that you have the time to try and decide, okay, do I go and wash my hair or do I like sit and watch my favorite show for 10 minutes? It's like, you can't.
And then like the window is gone. Yeah. Yes. So I think like right now, I have a couple of go-tos. One is like I can find 5 minutes and like do a 5-minute face mask if I'm home and sort of like bring spa energy to me here. Like I can find 5 to 10 minutes like usually to do that at some point. So that's one that I really like if I'm kind of craving that sometimes, and it just kind of depends if I can do it. It's just like going outside. Even if it's just like a step out, like get some sun, I'll probably do it after this call before my next one. Walk around the block for like, you know, again, 5 minutes has such a huge impact. And sometimes it's just like breathing, right? Like I feel like we, don't underestimate breathing. But yeah, like just, you know, taking those couple of minutes, like in through the nose, out through the mouth, and like really just like being present in my breath and like, you know, kind of regulating my nervous system. The last one is I like to listen to a podcast that has nothing to do with my work. Because I feel like I like very much live in the space that I work in. And so sometimes like it's easy to just like listen to like parenting and education and like, you know, all day. I like to have stuff that has nothing to do with that for these moments, even if I'm listening for a couple of minutes. So like I'm like a recovering theater kid. And that was like what I grew up with. I know like we both have that energy. So I feel like I have like this musical theater podcast that I love listening to that like goes through musicals and like, you know, has different people on and they kind of like pick them apart and analyze them, which just like really feeds my theater nerd soul. And I like just it lets me access a part of myself that I don't get to as often now. So that's another go-to for me, is just a couple of minutes listening to something that has nothing to do with what my usual rhythm is and kind of like break it up.
I love that. And the survival brain responds really well to doing something totally out of left field too. It'll kind of shake things up for you. I love that.
Yeah.
Jill, this has been so much fun. I just love you. I love everything you're doing, and the world needs more of you. And guys, go follow her. Do you have an email list? Is that all in the links that you gave us? Okay, perfect. Yeah. So get on her email list. You can find out what she's doing. And I love you so much. And we'll probably have you back on again. We'll go down some other rabbit holes together.
Yeah, we could do like the play styles, all the stuff, adult play. We could do all the things.
So juicy. So thank you so much, Jill. I really appreciate you being here and taking this time. And everybody, take such good care of yourself. We are what we've got. And being able to rewire ourselves from being too serious or in our shame spirals, not only does it help us, but it helps everyone around us. And if we're affecting the environment around us, let's all rise up together and affect it for joy and for good. So I hope you take such good care of yourselves, and we will see you here next time.